Good morning. Can you hear me? Is it working or not? A bit more volume. Hello. It's not working.
Nope.
This one is not really. Hi. Hello?
Nope.
Not working?
I think that's the volume for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is
No, this is the volume for this one. It's not really working.
No, I think that AV thing is
Huh?
actually that AV is actually the thing that's connected to the computer.
Yeah. But there should be.
Go to this one again. What's that? No.
No, that's the cam.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Is this on?
Is it red?
Yeah. It's not really working.
Yeah.
Hello. Is it? Good morning. Can you hear me now? Yes, a bit better. Generally, I don't speak too loud, but maybe. Welcome to the first lecture of construction analysis. Silence is much better. All right, so let's start. The first lecture is mainly about a subject overview and our philosophy. So what I'll do, I'll take these two documents, subject guide and the assignment guidelines. You can find them on the LMS. It's a very good idea to print them, keep a hard copy, and just refer to them every time you need some specific information, because they are full of, all the things that you need to know about the subjects are mainly written there. We've already used it for a few years, and we are refining it year after year. So most of the things, most of your questions and doubts should already be answered and addressed in these documents. If not, we've got our senior tutor is Jeanette. You can also contact myself. We are sitting in the MSD building, room 429 and 425. I'll show you a slide about it later. Let's do that. The idea is that I'd like to introduce myself, and then Jeanette will introduce herself. So while we are also waiting that some students are still coming, for me, for myself, like everything starts with this project, at least at the university. This is a crematorium in Japan, concrete, freeform, lightweight. It's very, very thin. So what does it mean? It means that the structural behavior of this is pivotal, it's really important. So if you really want to do something that is light like that and so thin, you really need to optimize the structure. And that's what I'm working on in my own research. So this is the first project I did. It was in 2007. Of course, this was done by Toyo Ito. I just work on the structural optimization of that. But overall, I'm interested in the idea of spatial structures, such as this one. This is a case study I've worked on from an historical point of view in Italy. I also work on the history of construction. And I also do this type of things with the students. For instance, reciprocal structures. This is in Denmark, 2010 and 2011. I was running workshops about that with physical models, digital tools, and also we realize some full-scale prototypes. So that overall, that's the type of teaching I've done in the last few years, and I'm doing here at the master. This is in France. Again, reciprocal structures, but we're using planar panels in this type. So this is 2012 and 2014. We have a lot of exchanges about teaching and workshops. This one specifically is in Melbourne. This is a photo from probably 2014, 2013, I can't remember now. But this is a studio I run at the Master of Architecture, and it's called How Virtual Becomes Real. So what we do, we combine together digital design and construction to design grid shells, so form-resistant structure. We'll look at that into another lecture. But so this is more or less my background and my profile. These are the type of structures I'm interested in, the things we look at in the studio with the students, and these are the type of things they do. So you see physical models, digital design, the two things are combined together to understand how the structural behavior and form work together. So most of the times when you think about what I'm saying, you can imagine also what my background is and what my idea about construction is. So these are the things I really like in general, to see all these things combined together, architecture with structure, with construction details and these type of things. No, it's not something that we're going to cover it. It's more a topic of the master. But overall, these are the type of projects that I generally work on with the students. We also run some construction workshops at the master. You've probably seen 1 year ago there was this type of small dome in front of the MSD building. Now we're just already demolished that. It's also a workshop we do together with the students at the master. And I'm also teaching in Nanjing for sometimes for a visiting studio. I'll probably go again next year. And similar thing, physical models, digital tools, and structural behavior. This is stuff that Jeanette has done in the last few years, and she's probably the best to speak about it. So she can probably introduce herself.
All right, so I'm Jeanette. You're probably sitting around the university a lot. I think I've actually had a lot of you already as students in other subjects, but I've worked previously at firms like McBride Charles Ryan after my undergraduate, where I promptly came back to university and signed up for the construction degree because I realised complicated structures actually need very detailed understanding of how things are put together in order to make them beautiful and not very ugly. So after working at McBride Charles Ryan on buildings like the one you see on your right, I also worked on smaller houses like the Cloud House, Klein Bottle House, and the hospital that you see across the road. I've opened up my own practice. We're doing things like fit-outs for cafes, Adriana Zumbo, and what my teaching in the Masters is mostly, is that the next picture? Yeah, my teaching in the Masters is mostly related to virtual realities, and we're currently doing a lot of things with the Oculus Rift, and our practice has been teaching at the Architecture Association in London and also Shanghai, Thailand, and a couple of other universities I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, there is also a video. I don't know if you want to play it.
Yeah, there's a video. So it's the type of work that we've been promoting in our Masters so far, which is a lot to do with looking at current technologies and how they might change the way we, change the world that we live in, and also how we can use current technologies to, you know, show and promote this and tell different stories. So these are, you know, graphic infographics. This is all student work at the moment that you can see, but yeah, no, it's good fun, and a lot of different mixture of things. This is Dogecoin, if you guys have ever come across it all on your travels on the internet. Yeah.
Well, I think it's really important for me, for us, to point out that our profile is not just in construction. What we've done in the last year goes, across disciplines, and I think the idea of this subject is that this is a basic subject, so you need to learn the basis of construction, but somehow we'll try to go a little bit into design, a little bit into history, a little bit into probably digital design and design automation. So we'll try to go across these things. And also, if you have any type of curiosity, question, just feel free to ask, because we're also teaching then at the master's level. So there will be a kind of path that you will probably see as again in the future, or maybe you'll decide to go into another path, but somehow you know that we'll be there. I have the feeling that my voice is not so strong as yours. Yeah. Well, you need to, I don't really mind of this, but it's important that there are copyrights on slides, lecture material, this type of thing. So you can get access to the LMS, you download them. This is not something that has to be distributed everywhere. It's something that is useful for your own study. And also the case studies that we are providing you, that's a documentation coming from architectural firms. It's not something that we really want you to distribute everywhere. So just bear in mind this, it's really important, all right? What we will cover today, as I said before, two documents, subject guide and assignment guidelines. So what I'll do is I'll just go through the list of things that I've written in there. So there are 5 sections: course organization, calendar and staff profiles. Then we talk about assignments and exam. After the assignments, there are the assessment criteria. You need to know how you're going to be assessed. And then some learning resources. After that, I'm going to explain you what the first assignment is about, so that you go to the first tutorial ready for that. The tutors will introduce again the case study for you, but you already know exactly what it is, and I explain you how we decided to write the assignment guidelines, so you also know how to read this type of documents. This is the way that we think the Bachelor of Environment has been defined and designed. So this is a nice painting, but if we want to explain really in 2 words what the Melbourne model is, you can just trace a line and you divide this Mount Fuji in 2 parts. So we're sitting now at the base. So what you're doing at the Bachelor of Environments is that you are developing a common ground, and you can also go, it's a very open model. You can go across disciplines and you can define your measure over time so that you can specialize and reach just the peak at the end of your path at the postgraduate level. So construction analysis, you have to imagine that when we define this subject, we cannot be entirely specific into a single thing. We need to make sure that all the students coming from different backgrounds and maybe with different ideas of going to different measures, it has to be at the same time specific and generic enough to allow all these students to be happy somehow and satisfied about the subject. So this is not a specific subject as we would do it in the master, all right? So if we imagine that this is the path, 3 plus 2, so 3 years of undergraduate plus 2 of postgraduate, this is exactly where you are sitting at the moment. So construction analysis is highlighted in red. I can't really see it because actually my screen is there, but I'll get used to this theater. You've probably done already either constructing environments or structural environments. That's something that you should have covered in the first year, otherwise you shouldn't be sitting in this room now. But there is a part related to design, which is the first one on the left. Then there is a part related to construction, but construction, let's say, for architects. And then there is a more technical construction part, which is also for construction measures. So these type of things can interrelate to one another, or you can also decide to change your path along the way. But the idea behind these subjects is that at the first year you talk about materials and structures or structural principles. Now that you are aware of what the materials are and the building elements are, we talk about building systems, how these things are combined together. Imagine a vertical and a horizontal element, how these two things touch, and what happens in that very moment, and also what is the sequence of construction. So that's the idea. Construction analysis is about building systems and the sequence of construction. If you get that, you'll pass. All right? So that's what we want you to get. After that, you'll go through the construction documentation with Blair Gardiner, third year, construction design. And then at the master, you're going to talk about building technology of high-rise buildings with Giorgio Marfella. All right? The construction major is more about the detailed stuff related to materials, especially concrete construction, steel construction, and these kind of things. In terms of philosophy and approach, I'm not sure we just have a single approach, but probably the most important thing is about having different points of view on the same stuff. So we just take the house and the type of projects you do in design subjects, and we just flip it and look at it again. So it's a different point of view. All right? So that's the main thing. Probably there are not only 2 points of view, there are many, several, but really forgive me if I simplify these in just 2 simple things. I just want to, to understand what are these 2 main categories. It's not so simple, but allow me to do this type of simplification. Let's say the architect on the one hand. So what we do are not solutions, propositions, proposals, right? Architects rarely solve problems. I don't want to say they generate problems, but they propose something for the future, all right? So the purpose of an architect, at the master I would say they have to solve problems, but here I would say they have to give proposals, ideas for the futures. Generally, builders, engineers, and I think their task is to solve problems. So your task is mainly to understand what, and their task is mainly to provide a solution on how to do that. All right? So that's the thing. In construction analysis, I think that what we need to cover is to understand how. Understand how, but also remember that there is someone who has decided what to do. So this means that at the end of the day, we need to be coherent and we need to respect the design ideas. We need to respect that. And maybe how to do it can be a source of inspiration for what to do. So these 2 things can actually have a dialogue. All right? They can enrich each other. Lectures and tutorials follow the same logic. So this means that in the lectures we're going to talk about theory, or we're going to show practical examples, but in a more theoretical way. In the tutorials with your tutor, you're going to talk about practice. You take case studies and you develop the assignments on how these case studies have been constructed and in what sequence. So that's the overall idea. You might ask me, but lectures and tutorials are not really related to each other. Yes and no. Yes, because somehow the 2 things run in parallel tracks, but no, because that's what I want to do. I want them to be separate, because they have different objectives. So I want the lectures and the tutorials to run a little bit independently, all right? So that's what you're going to do, actually. This is a nice image, but at the same time, it explains clearly what's the purpose of that. You're going to take a case study, a house, a local 2-story house from Melbourne, and your tutor is going to assign you a specific section of the house. You cut the house in half. Let's say you split it, and you really need to understand what happens within walls, elements, system nodes, services, whatever is inside the house have to be understood. Okay, so that's the purpose of the subject. And you could also ask me, why don't we just talk about the different methods and systems themselves? Why don't we talk about just brick veneer, and then maybe we talk about exposed concrete. Well, I could do that, but first there would be too many things to cover, and I'm not able to do that in just 12 lectures. Secondly, you're coming from different countries. I can see that. Maybe after this degree, you're going to work, let's say, back in China. Maybe you move to the US, or maybe you go to Europe. In Europe, we don't build like in Australia, I can tell you. So this means that the knowledge you need to develop has to be somehow portable. So the overall idea is that you don't learn just one system. You learn how to understand and recognize systems, so that maybe in 5-10 years there will be a new development, but you still know how to deal with that, all right? So it's not just purely declarative knowledge, it's just also about a method. That's my main concern, our main concern, to do that. Sorry about this slide, there is too much text, I know, but this is what is written in the handbook, and therefore this is what we look at when we develop the assessment criteria. So look at this carefully, because it's really important for your final assignment. So look at the first one. Relate building, manufacturing, and assembly principle to diverse small to medium scale. Small to medium scale. We're going to look at residential houses, two-story houses, not commercial buildings, not high-rise, okay? In a small house, you can still see all the different stages of a construction. So you can still understand the complexity of a construction site within the small to medium scale. So that's what we're talking about. Bear in mind this always. Our objective is not to understand just the system, but also understand the logic, the convention, the challenges of technical representation. Drawing is our tool. We're not allowed to go into construction sites and start building, because architects use drawing to communicate. So you need to understand what communication through drawing is. That's important. The next year you're going to develop construction documentation. So yes, you could say site visits are more interesting, but drawing is also essential. If you're a writer, you don't know how to write, there is no way you can communicate your ideas. And this is the same for us. It's about drawing. The third one is about understanding the relationship between building conception and building implementation, which actually means between architectural design idea, what and how. Is there any relationship, or what's the distance between these two things? All right, so that's point 3. And the fourth one is, this is a bit more, let's say, we would like you to develop an interpretative framework on that. So after you know how a house is done, if you really need to, let's say, write a review about a project, what would you say? Now that you know the logic of construction, would you appreciate more or less some of the projects you're already familiar with? So what's your opinion about some historical case studies once you know how they were done? All right, so theoretical framework, criticism, not criticism, critic. Yeah. Of course, the expected skills are related to that, so I'm not going to read them, but this slide will be on the LMS, and therefore you just read it every week until week 12. Calendar. This is very important. I hope that you read my first message and you didn't go to the tutorial on Wednesday. But it would be very odd to go to a tutorial before lecture 1. So if you go to part 2 of the subject guide, you will find this calendar here. There are 4 different colors. White is for lectures. So it's white because you never show up. So I decided that maybe it has to be white, not so relevant. Tutorials are a bit more relevant, so it's gray, light gray. Submissions are very important, so red, very, very strong red. Feedback is also important, rather important, but less than submissions, which is light blue. Yes, I think it's nice. Yeah. So you'll get feedback twice in a year after the second submission, which means before the non-teaching period, and then you'll get feedback also at the end of week 12, so before the exam. You need to know before sitting at the exam where you stand. There will be, on a weekly basis there will be feedback. You're going to review your assignments with the tutor, so I'm pretty sure you will know what's your situation throughout the semester. But the official feedback, with numbers, is going to be on those 2 dates. The structure of this has been considered in order to divide the main assignment we have in 3 parts. The first one related to the understanding of the building and the sequence. The second one to develop the full set of drawings. And the third one to animate the actual flipbook section assignment. So these are the 3 families on the right. And how do the lectures are related to this? Well, the lectures are not entirely related. We talk in the first 3 weeks about principles and approach. And then we're going to talk about materials and systems, but not just materials as you did in constructing environments. So materials already composed together as a system. And then the third part will be about building performance. So we'll have also a couple of guest lectures. And the overall idea is that in the last few weeks you will understand why are we using these systems. Is it for a structural reason, environmental reason, comfort reason? So what are they actually doing in practice? All right? So that's the overall idea of how, when we sit at the table, we conceive the calendar and the lectures. Any concerns, claims, criticism, appreciation is welcome. So just write us for whatever concern you have. Just tell us. We would be very happy to look at it. Lectures, Friday. It looks like 2/3 of you already know that. I don't know about the other third. Good morning. Tutorials are on Wednesday. You need to attend the tutorials. It's rather important. We are going to check attendance at the tutorial, so you really need to be there. Is that all right? If you don't show up to the tutorials on a weekly basis, you're likely to, not to fail the subject, but it will be very difficult to catch up later on. If you go there on a weekly basis and you really follow the tutor's instructions, I bet it's so difficult to fail the subject, because week after week, you're going to get all the points you need. So we really want you to pass the subject, putting all the efforts, especially in the first part, so that towards the end, when you have other submissions, you just have to produce and deliver the drawings without thinking, because all the conceptual part, I think, is at the beginning. It's sitting in the first 3-4 weeks, right? And this is our crew. Yes, so we've got 4 tutors who have already taught before. They got excellent feedback, so they're back on board. And then we've got other 4 new tutors. Their story is pretty interesting. Like, if you look at Dr. Mark Lamb, he's actually a doctor, so he did medical research for 10 years before graduating in architecture and starting working as an architect. So if you have a bit of fever, you can also ask him about that. But I would be more interested if you just speak about the flipbook section. David Ryan has worked for more than 10-15 years. I don't remember exactly, but all our tutors have a lot of years, several years of experience in practice. Natalie Lysenko, also several years of experience at ARM. She's also tutored at RMIT in the last 5 years. And Katie Miller is a graduate of the University of Melbourne. She also got an award a few years ago as best student in the master's. So I'm pretty sure there will be interesting stuff to say also in that tutorial. And the 4 tutors on the top, they are well known at UniMelb. They generally teach and they are involved in construction subjects. Anna Pierre, Ray, Matthew, and Julian. All right? So you'll find in the subject guide their descriptions, their biography, and at the moment, the new ones haven't got the real email address yet. So you will find there will be Jeanette's email. You know that the university takes a bit of time to do that. Probably by next week or in a couple of weeks, they will get their own address. In the meanwhile, you'll need to write Jeanette, and she will be happy to forward the communication to the tutor. Right? This is only for the new tutors. We cannot control that. The university does the contracts, and we can't do more than that. This is ourselves. This is not to compare the faces with the photos. It's to show you the rooms in which we are sitting. Room 429, room 425. I'll be there, but write me an email before. Jeanette also will be there, but write her an email before. Otherwise, I'm going to hide in room 430 if you show up without an appointment. So please write us before. Is that all right? Yes? You know where these rooms are? They are at the 4th level on the last wing, the coldest wing of the building. Yeah, what about workload? Before writing this section, I had a quick look at the policy, and I always thought you have 4 subjects per semester. So this means this subject is 12.5. This means 25% of your workload. So 10 hours per week, because a week is done of 40 hours, working hours. And this means 10 by 12, 120 hours. That is not true. Actually, the policy says 170 hours, because this includes non-teaching periods, and also when you are going to prepare for the exam, so after the semester is finished. So in total, you have to think about working 10 hours per week for 17 weeks in a row. This also includes the lectures. So today, you have already worked 2 hours. Good, eh? On Wednesday, are the 2 hours. So that's all. I don't think we're going to require you more than that. Or maybe you will work 1 week 12, 14. The week after, you will probably work 8 or 6. Don't work more than that, because this is going to sacrifice other subjects. Don't work less than that in order to give priority to other subjects. It has to be a balance. It has to be your own organization, okay? Your own management of time. Yeah, full-time course of study, attendance of lectures is important, attendance of tutorials is important, and all this stuff. Work progressively. This is also important. Our assignment is done in order for you to start at week 2. And if you actually start at week 8, I don't really know how to support you to develop all this stuff before. Maybe it might not be the best way for you to work, but it's the way we have decided to organize the subject. So you really need to spend time week after week. So it's not really about how many hours you spend per week, but it's about working consistently without stop. That's really the key to success. All right? Checklist. Actually, this is the assessment criteria, but let's say checklist, so that we want you to look at this before you are assessed, because that's also another very strategic way just to provide us what we want. So all the assignments are going to be assessed against 4 different categories. They will always be the same. And you see here completeness of the deliverable. So we'll look how many things you have actually submitted. We require, let's say, 10 pages of an essay. You have submitted just 8 pages. That is not complete. not very difficult to understand exactly how to assess that. So overall completeness of what you submit. Second criterion is about construction methodology and sequence. So do you really understand what is the construction methodology and sequence of the trades in your own case study? Is it clear, the narrative of the construction sequence from the drawings you submit? So we're going to look into that. The third, then you can use it to self-assess yourself, you know? It's like when a few months ago I had to sit at the IELTS test, and then you self-assess yourself before going to the test. And generally you get more than what you get at the test. But try to self-assess yourself with this list, or also discuss it with your tutor if you need it. All right? They will be very keen to give you feedback week after week. The third one is about representation and description of building systems, elements, and components. You could say it's about your drawing skills. Yes, it is. It's also about communication skills. Drawing is the way to communicate things. So representation means understanding. If I ask you to define something and you don't know what to say, it doesn't mean you don't know how to speak the language. It also means the concept is not clear in your mind. So that's the third thing. The fourth one is building performance. So this is the way to get a very high mark at the end. When you have fulfilled the first three, then you know exactly what happens structurally from the environmental point of view. Did all these type of things, and you'll get up to 6 points for that. Building performance. Right? If you have any questions about this, let us know now, or you can write us an email, as you prefer. I would really encourage you to read them, maybe during the break, so that after we can discuss about it. All right? Learning resources. This is a critical one. I would really love to take just a textbook and tell you, this is construction analysis. You don't want to come to the lecture, you find all the, the responses are in there. Unfortunately, such a book doesn't exist yet. There are some books which can cover most of what we do, but they come from the US, or they come from, there is a very good one from Switzerland. So all the standards, conventions, but also the building systems, and they're all different. So somehow they can confuse you. They are still written in section 5 of the subject guide, so that you can look into them, but don't take all what you see there as a must, because they refer also to different countries, different notations, different conventions. So the only thing I can tell you is that there is not a single textbook about Australian small to medium scale constructions. There are a few resources that you have to merge together. We'll try to provide as much information as we can in the lecture slides, and also to give you other links, but we cannot just give you a textbook and say, just study that one and sit at the exam. Unfortunately, that is not possible. I know there is a colleague working on a book, but I don't really know exactly when it's going to be released. Is that fine? Of course, you can also use, as written here, the tutor's knowledge. And there is a note that we would like you to use the drafting tools you are familiar with. There are no rules about drawing by hand, freehand, cut. Do whatever you want, just do it. But you really need to also use what you are good at. So, and if you really need to develop some skills that are not there at the moment, that's extra time you need to reserve for yourself. Because drafting skills, drawing skills are covered by other subjects. So we cannot spend time in learning AutoCAD or other things. There are online resources for that, and there is a link in this subject guide about the Lynda tutorials for AutoCAD, Rhino, and also other editing software. All right? So everything, there is a link for that, but it's something that you have to cover on your own, mainly, or in the tutorial. SCS scores and comments. We have to do that by policy. So we need to look at the comments you gave us last year, which can be frustrating sometimes, but helpful to develop the subject further. A few years ago, we used to get comments on this kind on the lockers. Thankfully, this was in the last building. Did you write that? No. Yeah, no.
No, I have, but no.
Yeah, well, that was well thought, but unfortunately it's not there at the moment. This year we haven't received anything of this kind, so probably there was an improvement. This shouldn't be recorded, actually. Well, what was good last year? Well, it's not a full slide, half slide. Subject structure, calendar, and organization. So these type of things last year were clear. There was not mismatching information, and everything was well organized. So this is something that we've got as a good feedback from several students. Also that the lectures are somehow related to history or design, so there is a bit of breadth in that. That was a comment. I'm giving a synthesis now. The deep focus on the construction sequence and understanding on that as a subject overall. The students thought that this was a good point of the subject. Tutorials and assignments which are based on real case studies. So you take some local projects done in Melbourne, something that you can actually find on journals and websites, and you become familiar with that. So they thought this is good, that you see the full documentation, and you talk. In some cases, the tutor is also the architect who designed that. The last point is that generally there were good tutors, and they even think that actually the tutorials are much more helpful than the lectures. So I'm telling you, they were good tutors, and I think we've got them back. So that should be all right.
I'll add to that.
Yeah.
We actually walked into the very first lecture that year. One of the things that really stood out was when what's his face, guy with the white hair, and I forget his name, but he goes, it's a 70% failure rate, so good luck, and everyone's just like,
Yeah, well, it was a different time.
high props to not
I think you met us in a very difficult time of our life. Hopefully this is gone. What to improve, which actually means what is bad. Okay, so there is what to improve. This is only from 2014, so not 2013. And below there is, let's say, my response. So something was intentional and something can be improved. So some assignments require freehand drawing. That is true. That was a requirement, to draw freehand. I can understand the importance of that. You go to the construction site, maybe you need to sketch something. I think it's really important that you know how to do that freehand. 2012, 13, 14, the students don't want to do that. I don't know what to say. Don't do it. Draw using AutoCAD. I'm fine. Just, as I said before, do whatever you want. Just do it in a good way. I'm not going to transform your ideas. I'm really interested in seeing the final result and that you understand the logics of construction. My personal opinion is starting not freehand, or let's say by hand, is easier because you take tracing paper, you sketch, you draw, you understand things. And then when the ideas are clear, then you use CAD. That's my idea. Okay? You can do it in a different way. So that's my suggestion. But you're free to do whatever you want. So hopefully next time we won't get this type of comment. Lecture contents overlap with previous subjects such as constructive environment. Yes, that is true. That is partially true. There were overlaps. In that case, what we've done is to revise the subject. This happens because they also revise the subject year after year. So probably there was something that we covered twice. We'll try not to repeat the same mistake this year. So we are aware of what they did, and some lectures are revised. In some other cases, it's intentional to repeat a specific notion because maybe we really want to make sure that that is clear before covering something else. So sometimes it's intentional, and it shouldn't happen too often. All right? What about lectures and tutorials which are not related to each other? I think I covered that before. They're not related to each other because they have different objectives. You have to sit at the exam, and the exam is something that is developed looking at the lecture slides and just preparing questions. They cover, there is a broader perspective. And the tutorials are for the assignment. So two different objectives, and this means somehow they are not related to each other. There is a relationship which is not obvious. It's your own task to find that type of connection. Too much information in the lecture slides, too many slides overall. Yes, of course, we want to give you some resources you can use to study for the exam. I mean, maybe I'm going to flip over the slides faster, and then you can read them at home again. But I don't know. I understand the point, but I don't see how this could be a bad point. If you want me to cut the slides, I'm happy to do so. It's just less work for me. But I don't know. I read that several times, and maybe you should explain to me what that means, because I don't really know. Just don't read it if you think it's too much. The subject does not relate to site visits. It is just a drawing exercise. Yes, I was a bit disappointed about this comment, not because we are not doing site visits, it's because I think that if you say that, the spirit of the subject is not so clear. Of course, site visits are important, but drawing, as I said before, is the way we design things. Drawing is not just a way to represent things, it's a tool of thought. Through drawing, you understand. It's like through writing, you understand things. All right? Okay, so this is something that you have to practice yourself at home. And the construction site, you're not going to learn more about construction just because you go to the construction site, okay? So it's not just, you don't learn more about sex because you watch porn movies. You have to practice yourself. Okay, so site visits are not, maybe the relationship is not exactly the same, but you get the point. Yeah. So this is not a drawing exercise. It's a way to... Yeah, enough? Okay. The last point is that the flipbook section is repetitive. Yes, it is, because design is repetitive. How many times do you repeat and you redraw your plans in the design subjects? Design is iterative. You define different things, so this is also repetitive. I cannot change that. It's intrinsic. In Latin, you would say repetita iuvant. It means that that is helpful to improve what you're doing. All right? And if you have any questions, otherwise, what would design be without coffee breaks? We'll be back in 10 minutes and talk about the first assignment. Questions? No? Coffee? Yes. Good. Very well. The second part of the lecture is about the first assignment. I'm going to spend a bit more time on this so that you also know the way we have prepared the document. The cover you see here is also this one. So you know exactly what the structure of this document is, and you will find similar instructions for assignments 2 and 3, so that you know how to read that. So flipbook session assignments, 1, 2, 3, actually means that there are 3 assignments in the subject, and they're all about developing different stages of a single assignment, which is the flipbook section. This document is developed in 4 different sections. All the documents related to the assignment are developed in 4 sections. I think they're rather straightforward. What to do, how to do it, when to do it, and why. Okay, you really want to know why you're doing something. You really need to know when are the deadlines, but also a bit of guidelines, and also exactly what to deliver and submit. So we didn't get any specific complaints about that, so we thought that it was working well, and we're going to use the same structure this year. Now, the first point is, what is a flipbook section? Well, you know very well that generally when you see projects, architectural projects on journals and magazines, they're always drawn as built. So it's always about the final product. But we never know exactly what are the different stages of construction. We never see a section, let's say, in the middle, halfway through. We never see a section of people working on the construction site. So the idea of the flipbook section is that we animate the construction process from stage 0. So when you just go there to the site and you start excavating and building footings and foundations until the finishes of the building. So the idea of the flipbook is that there is a narration. The final section is the result of a process, and you're going to tell this story through the assignment. That's the overall idea. So not as built, but we want to see different stages of construction. That's a flipbook section. You see the image in the cover. You know, it's like the early filmmakers that they were taking different drawings and then flip through the pages, and you actually see the animation of the different pages. So this one will be reintroduced again by your tutors on Wednesday, so on the 5th of August. And you're going to work on case studies. As I said before, 2-story residential case studies. 3 assignments, so we divide this flipbook section in 3 stages. If you want to draw the sequence of construction, first you need to know how the house is as built. So first we require you to redraw a specific section you are assigned to, and having done that, then you start working on 12 different stages. So you have to redraw the section 12 times, and this is the second part of the assignment. And after that, we require you to add further annotations, drawings, sketches, details, to tell the story. So that's the final preparation of the storyboard, the narration. In the past, we saw that this type of third phase was the major point for saying that the assignment is repetitive. This year, I've got another idea. So once you've done the drawings, I think we're going to put them on slides and find a way to animate these. Then there is a narration, like, a voiceover, and you record these short videos, very simple videos of 4 or 5 minutes, so that you can just play these videos, and that's the narration. That's the final assignment, the final flipbook. The real objective of the flipbook, to animate that. So I think that's something that could actually help you when you write the final script, to see if the drawings help you to tell that story, or if you need to add or modify them here and there. So that's the idea of the third part, the development of the actual flipbook. I already said that before. You can draw by hand, you can draw using AutoCAD, You can draw by hand, then you scan the drawings, and then you decide to edit the drawings using InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop. Do whatever you want. You can prepare an outline in InDesign or in CAD, and then you want to draw by hand on it. Again, it's up to you. The best thing is ask us, ask the tutors what they would do, ask your peers, talk with the other students. Do what you are good at. So these are the rules. Again, do whatever you want. So don't write me an email. Can I use AutoCAD? Yes, just do the assignment. Do whatever you want. You can also use Microsoft Word if you like to draw on that. Just do the assignment. I'm saying that because sometimes it happens to me to draw a small section in Word. It's fine. Items for end drawing. In the case you don't have them, there are some suggestions on this document on where to buy them and what to buy. So you can just follow these instructions. Generally, they should cover all what you need if you want to draw by hand. I would get them anyway, because you will need to draw by hand probably several times. But if you draw by hand, we really want you to work on tracing paper. So that's the only thing I ask you. So if you want to draw by hand, you need to use tracing paper, so that when you put the second layer on the top of the first one, you actually see what you drew before. That's really important. That's the only requirement, right? Really the only thing I'm asking you to do. And as I said, if you are not entirely proficient in AutoCAD or Rhino, maybe Rhino is also another very good tool to start learning now. There are tutorials online. The Unimelb has got access to Lynda tutorials, which generally you need to pay for, but you've got access as a student of the Unimelb. And just go through them. There are so many, so whatever you need, they're very short videos with instructions on how to do specific things. And there are for different programs, so just go into that. And if you need help, you can write us an email what type of tutorials you need to look at. We can give you recommendations. These are the 8 case studies. So there are 8 houses which have been selected for a few reasons. First, they are not very conventional houses. They're a bit at a higher level. So, good products, good architectures. Second, they have a very good documentation. So you've got architectural drawings, structural drawings, services, a full set of photographs of all the construction stages. Without these, we wouldn't use it as a case study, so that you've got all what you need to develop the assignments. In some other cases, the tutors have worked on the design of that. For instance, the Cave House with Matthew Borg, or the Black House, Ray Cheng. They've developed these houses, so they actually know what it is because they've done it. So that's probably the best. So there are this type of criteria we've used to select the case studies. In the other cases, the tutors are very familiar with these houses and they know exactly what type of systems have been used. So they will introduce the case study at tutorial 1, and please refer to them for any questions. On the LMS, there is a folder which is called Case Studies, and you can download that. I'm going to show you in a few minutes where that is. So I've just put on slides what is written in the document. So the first section is what to do, and this has to be done by the 19th of August, 1 p.m. Shower, fresh, 3:15 tutorial. Okay, not 2 p.m., otherwise it's too late. You arrive late to the tutorial. 1 p.m. So I'm giving you all the time you need until the tutorial. Right, that should be enough. So the submission is always on Wednesday at 1 p.m., always. Just the time to arrive here for the tutorial at 3:15. I cannot give you more than this. It's really the maximum possible. So what to do? You go to the tutorial, and what your tutor is going to do is going to take the plan of your house, and it's going to divide it into sections. Then it's going to assign you a specific section and plan portion, and that's yours. You're going to work on that for 12 weeks. Another student is going to work on another section of the same house, but you all have different sections. So you're going to analyze the whole house as a class, but a specific portion of the building as an individual. All right? So that's what is tutorial 1. The deliverables, so what to do, what we want you to submit on the 19th of August, is 3 documents. So the first one is a 1 to 50 scale section of your house, the one assigned specifically to you. Then another 1 to 50 plan portion of your case study, again, the one which you've been assigned to. And then there is a third page. I'm going to tell you what it is in a few minutes. It's a summary of the 12 stages. So this is a summary, a list, a descriptive list of what is going to be assignment 2. So 3 pages, 3 A3 sheets. That's assignment 1. PDF, so this means that if you work by hand, you need to scan it, high resolution, and then submit it, one single document. If you work on CAD, you need to print it in A3 in order that when, to save it in A3 format so that if I want to print it, it's to scale. So make sure that's working, all right? That's very important. How to do it? You'll find some guidelines. My first suggestion is that before starting the assignment, you read the assessment criteria, so you know exactly what we're going to look at. Having done that, you go into the LMS. This is a screenshot of how the LMS should look like, and there is a folder which is called Case Studies. You will find 8 case studies with architectural drawings, structural drawings, and photos in PDFs or compressed into a zip file. So you just take your own case study and you download it. In order to understand what your case study is, you refer to the tutor name and the case study of the slide before. And in order to understand who your tutor is, you're going to check the subject guide, part 2, where there is a list of all the tutors. All right? Then, another thing I'd like you to do at the beginning, spend some time, print all the drawings in A3. So all what you get, don't look at that on the screen, print them out. Use them to take notes. Use them to understand what you are doing throughout the semester. Print the full set of drawings, not the photos, the drawings. Print them to scale. Do it straight away and go to the tutorial with the printout. Also take the Australian standards. Unfortunately, the Australian standards are not available just as a simple PDF. They expire after 24 hours. So you need to download it from the library, and then if you need to look at that after 2-3 days, you need to download it again. Or another possibility is that you print it and then you keep it as a hard copy, or you print it and scan it. But they are available from the library, but I don't know why they've decided that this type of document expires after 24 hours. So just bear in mind that you'll need to download it again if you need it after 24 hours. This is our belief, all right? So you need to draw according to the Australian standards every time. These are the conventions that are required by construction documentation. Refer to that anytime you have a doubt. Anytime you have a question about that, refer to the Australian standards. That's the right way to draw in Australia. Now, specifically, how to do it. you'll get something like that. Let's say this is a plan. Your tutor is going to probably give you, let's say, a section line like that, and then it's going to tell you, now you look east. And what you have to produce is a section, not of just the sectional cut, but also of the projected, also the background. So we want to see what happens also in the projected part of the building. All right? So when you draw the 12 stages, you need to show anything that happens also behind. So it's not just the section, also what we see behind. That's really important. You will see in some examples at the end that it's going to make the section alive. And yes, this is an example. This is done by hand because that was a requirement. But let's say assignment 1 looks more or less like this. A section, a planned portion as built. Then, having done that, we want you to place 12 cardinal numbers from 1 to 12 to the drawings. So we want you to tell us what you think about the construction sequence. So take your drawing, let's say the one on the left, and you start putting numbers and arrows. And you say, okay, I think we're going to do these footings and that stage 1, then this is stage 2, then there might be some overlaps or things happening at the same time. Do that and divide it, conceptually divide it, in 12 stages from 1 to 12. You know what? The tutors are going to explain you what are the 12 stages for your own tutorial. This might differ from case study to case studies. You know, not all the houses are built exactly in the same way. So you have to ask your tutor what the 12 stages are for your own tutorial. But, and this is the third page, you know, the third one with the list, where we want you to just write down with a bit more details what these stages are, because you cannot just explain all that on the drawing. So just take a third page and do that. It doesn't have to have the same layout, but I thought that this was a good reference. So minimum something like that, with a list, could be photographs, could be sketches, just to explain what are the 12 stages, just to make sure that when the tutor receives that, they are already checked and approved before you proceed to an assignment 2. Because then assignment 2, you will have to draw the 12 stages. So you better make sure that they are correct before you start. So that's why we do this first assignment. This is a suggestion of 12 stages. As I said, not all the houses are going to be done exactly following this procedure. Your tutor is going to take this list and rearrange it according to your specific case study during the first tutorial. So you do that as a class, but maybe in some specific sections you will still have to change it. So just talk to your tutor about that and ask him to approve or ask her to approve this list before you start doing the assignment. This will happen next Wednesday. All right? Generally speaking, I think it's reasonable to think that we start from footings, foundations, and we'll end up with finishes. But probably, let's say stage 8 or 9, they don't have to be exactly like that. That's just an example. When to do it, this is also rather important, but you don't need to copy it now because it will be recorded. The lecture slides will be uploaded this afternoon, and it's also written here. There are 3 important steps. The first one is on Wednesday. You're going to be introduced to the case study and your specific section by the tutor. Then there will be week 3, so tutorial 2. You're going to review what you've done with the tutor, and then you have another week before submitting. It should be enough generous for you to do the assignment, redo it if necessary, polish it, and submit it. All right, so 3 important dates. the third tutorial won't be about that. You need to submit it before going to the tutorial at 1 p.m. All right? Probably last year you used to submit assignments using the assignment tool, but I think you all know that now we have a new system which is called Turnitin. So that's what we require you to use. I haven't used it before, and I won't use it because I don't have to submit, but I'm going to read your assignments, and I want to get just one PDF, one single PDF, not 25 for 25 pages, and not 200 megabytes, but try to compress your files and make sure that they are no more than 30 megabytes and A3. So that's the format we would like to receive. If you just provide a hard copy to the tutor, that doesn't count. That's the only official submission. Just really remember that. It's very important that you do the submission in time. Well, why to do it? I think I said that a little bit before. I think it's very important that this first phase is done properly. Otherwise, when you're going to draw the 12 stages after, you will have troubles. So if you know how the section works as built, your plan works as built, and you know you have a correct list of stages and your tutor has approved that, then it will be easy because you just sit there and you start drawing the 12 stages week after week. So this first assignment is really to make sure that you have understood the assignment. An assignment to understand other assignments. And it's still worth 12%. So it's not I think it's enough. 12 points after 3 weeks is already good for just 3 drawings. Actually, 2 drawings and 1 page of a list. So it should be pretty generous. Examples. Now, I want you to know that there is a disclaimer, but not for me. This is for you, because last year I was showing these examples, which of course come from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So this means that the assignment is at the same time similar and different. So there was probably a different brief, and you might see drawings which don't respond exactly to the assignment you have to develop this year. The idea is that they should give you the feeling of what I'm requiring. So this is just to give the spirit of the assignment, all right? So it's not really the assignment as it should be. It's just an example. If your assignment doesn't look like this, it's fine, because you have a different brief, right? So this is not an example that you have to compare with yours and say, oh, I'm doing something that is not correct because this drawing doesn't look the same. No, they are different. They are slightly different. So don't start with panic and emails. This assignment is different. We've got several of that in the last years. So these examples are a bit different. I can show you a house we're no longer using. Coyontis, South Melbourne House. This is the first example. You have already seen these 2 drawings, section and plan as built. Then there is the list of the 12 stages with a bit of photographs to illustrate what happens. But I think the interesting part starts here, when you see that there is a first stage which could be called footings foundations, and you see that there is a phase of excavations. You see the layout of the building, which is not there. There is an existing building on the back, and they are already placing the formworks and the reinforcing rods, batches for the edge beams to be poured. And in the plan view, you actually see the mesh, the batches, and there are some photographs and other captions to illustrate what happens. You don't have to do that now, just the final drawings. And also later, just the drawings, no photographs, and just an example, right? And then let's say if I flip this quickly, you see that something happens. Some objects are placed there and then removed. For instance, just to keep in position the stud walls for a few stages. And you see the services are not completely done, so you will see some wires here and there. And further on, stage 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is more or less what your final product could look like at week 10, 11. Another example, just to show you that they might really differ from each other. This is done freehand. It's a bit more sketchy, the way the student has done this. But you see the section as built, and you see all the numbers with description of the building systems involved in a specific construction stage. Again, this is a bit more sketchy than the previous one, but still very effective. You see footings, foundations. You also see this dotted line. It's always the outline of the finished building, even if not there. And you also see the importance of having a plan view, because sometimes the section is not enough to explain what's going on. So you see that the plan view is important to understand maybe some services, to see the mesh, or to see the floor, the joists. So somehow plan and section work together. Let's animate that. You see here that in some cases, when the scale is not enough to show a specific detail, there is another detail that is at a different scale, just to explain exactly what happens in that point. But this is something that I want you to do just for the third assignment, assignment 3. One missing. And 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12. And we are towards the end. So this is another example of how this assignment could look like if it was done by hand, a bit sketchy. Now, I'm stopping. We're going to talk about Romance, construction, machines, and design automation. So from the construction principles until digital fabrication. Thank you.